Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our webinar. Today, we're going to talk about securing our malware with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. But before we do, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please post the questions in the chat. Since we are two speakers today, each of us will answer your questions when the other one is talking. So please don't be shy and send your questions during the presentations. At the end, we'll also have a Q&A section where we will answer a question or two, something that we feel that is worth sharing with the audience, but we'll do our best to make sure that all questions get an answer. Please feel free to ask, as they say, the only silly question is the one that is unasked. And with that, let's start with introductions. My name is Danny Zidoni. I'm a product enablement specialist at NetApp. I've been working at NetApp for more than 6 years now. And before that, I've been building SaaS applications for companies like insurance companies and banks. So I'm quite aware of the concerns when it comes to security risks, especially on AWS. And therefore, I'm very excited to present my guest today, my co-host, and that's Sébastien Beroubet from AWS. Sébastien, if you could please say a few words.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sebastian, as Danny's mentioned. I've been with AWS here on the worldwide specialist team for several years. Prior to this, worked at NetApp also, hence the linkage here. And I'm really happy to spend this morning, or anyways, for me, and based out of Colorado this morning with you guys.
Thank you very much. And after we've introduced ourselves, we'll be very happy to know a little bit about you. What is your familiarity with Amazon FSx for NetApp? What are you currently using for storage in your AWS workloads? Please answer the poll. It will help us to tailor the session as much as we can. And we'll be waiting for the results. Okay, and Liat, the producer, is paging me that we have the results. So Liat, if you could please show me the results. Okay, so first of all, I'm very happy to say that about half of the attendees have very little knowledge about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, which is great because we this session is we also build it for as an introductory session, but those who know FSx for ONTAP, I do believe we'll try to make it entertaining for you as well. We also see that some people use it for different workloads, some use it for databases, which is great. And we also see that other services in AWS are used as well. Some people use FSx for ONTAP, some people use EBS and EFS and other services, which is great. So with that, let's get going. So today we are talking about the different layers of security, how we're securing our data. And essentially, when it comes to bad actors, what usually their holy grail, their golden pot is our data. This is what they can use either for ransom and maybe for other malicious intent. And also, therefore, there's lots of regulations around data. We all remember the GDPR, the CCPA, and other regulations worldwide. Therefore, the industry slowly have developed through evolution the 7 layers of cybersecurity. How do we secure our data? How do we what is our comprehensive approach for protecting our data? So first of all, there's human security. Essentially, us people, sometimes we tend to be the weakest link. We all have the very minimum, which is username and password. And with that, we have our password policy that sometimes we need to change every 90 days, and we have to make sure that the password meets a certain standard. We might also have multi-factor authentication, which is also industry standard today. And other than that, of course, we need to have a perimeter security. We want to make sure that our offices and our premises are secured and not everybody can just waltz into our office and take whatever IP they want. We all walk around with badges. And for example, if we take AWS, for example, the data centers are gratefully not available for everybody to walk in. They're very secured, and only and access there is on a need-to-know basis. And next we move into our endpoint security. Now we all have our workstations or our laptops, and we all have our corporate antivirus or other security tools that we all know have the tendency to pop up and at the least convenient moment. But we all know that that's, although it sometimes can be inconvenient, it is necessary to make sure that our business data is protected from our endpoint. Next up is our network security. When we connect from our endpoint to our data center or to wherever we need to work, we want to make sure that the network itself is protected and encrypted, and that we don't have any bad actors who are listening in the middle, trying to extract data or vulnerabilities that will lead to our data. Last but not another important layer is the application itself, app security. During the business, we use many different applications, could be first party, third party. Want to make sure, if we have any coders in the audience, you will know that the emphasis being given nowadays to secure coding, to make sure that bad actors do not find vulnerabilities in our code and use applications, whether they be the applications that we work with daily or monthly, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that bad actors do not use these applications to breach our defenses. And last but not least, where the data itself lies, the storage layer, our last line of defense, where the data resides. If that is breached, then our data is significantly compromised. This is where bad actors want to get. As we said, we need to make sure that we have a comprehensive way of security. That's why we've decided, because we want to have our data secured and well protected, is why we've decided to work in AWS, among other things. And when it comes to AWS gives us a great toolbox to protect our data, but we need to know how to use the tools and exactly what is our responsibility. And with that, I'm handing it over to Sebastian to tell us about the shared responsibility model.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's hard to talk about security in AWS without bringing up the shared responsibility model. If you've been around AWS for any amount of time, I'm sure you've seen this slide before. It's been presented to you. You've had conversations around what is your responsibility versus AWS's responsibility. But this is really a joint effort to keep your environment as secure as possible. If we start at the bottom, AWS's responsibility within the shared security model is to provide the security of the cloud. So when we look at the components underneath in the orange boxes here, you'll see like the regions, the availabilities, the edge locations. Those are all physical locations. So ensuring that only the appropriate personnel has access to those locations to come and do hardware maintenance, to come and upgrade the environment, add more hardware to the environment. This is our responsibility. If we work our way up the stack a little bit, all of the hardware that's sitting within those data centers, it's our responsibility, AWS's responsibility, to apply firmware to make sure that we've got the latest version of network operating system, storage operating system within our services to ensure that if there's any common vulnerability that's identified with any of the code that we're running on behalf of the customers, that we remediate that as quickly as possible. So for example, if we take databases in this case, a great example of database is RDS for Oracle. Well, there's two ways you can run Oracle within AWS. Well, there's multiple ways, but two main predominant ways you can run Oracle. You can decide to run Oracle on your own while basically executing the code within an EC2 instance, configuring the EC2 instance, and so on and so forth. And then this is referred to most commonly as a customer managed database. In this event, then the responsibility to maintain Oracle, since you've deployed a very specific version of Oracle and you're managing it, this is bestowed upon the customer. But if you take a service like RDS for Oracle, for example, then all of a sudden you've actually taken the responsibility of managing Oracle and you've given that to AWS, and you're expecting AWS to make sure that your Oracle instances are patched, that you've got the appropriate version of Oracle that's running, that everything is secure on your behalf. And your responsibility now becomes within the blue squares that we have at the top, and it is the responsibility of the data. So we give customers a lot of different tools to make sure that their environment is secure, whether it be, network access control lists, security groups, but then it becomes the customer's responsibility to go into those security groups and define what rules will allow traffic in and out of their EC2 instances. And so that responsibility is all on the customers. So as you can see, AWS provides you with the controls, with the tools to implement security. And in some cases, back to our example around Oracle, we take on the responsibility of running some of the middleware for you. And then it's the customer's responsibility to ensure that their data is encrypted, that their data is backed up, and that they all of the configurations that they put in place using those tools are configurations that will keep their environment safe. So bottom line is, we really need to work together, you, the customer, by defining the policies and defining which rules need to put in place, and for us to provide customers with the appropriate tools so that they can put those policies in place to keep their environment and their data safe.
Okay, thank you very much, Sebastian. And now I'll talk a little bit about, now that we've established that we do have, after reviewing the shared responsibility model, we've established that essentially we have responsibility. I like the I like the analogy of essentially we get a state-of-the-art safe to put our valuables in, but if we don't use the lock, or if we don't, or if we put a very easy combination like 1, 2, 3, 4, then that state-of-the-art safe will struggle protecting our data. So what do we need to take into consideration when we think about securing our storage layer? So first of all, we need to make sure that need to think about our data integrity. We need to ensure that the data has not been corrupted or tampered with, or most importantly, make sure that if the data has been corrupted or tampered with, we can mitigate that and return to business as quickly as we can. We also want access control. We keep our data on the storage layer. We want to make sure that, first of all, only people or services vetted by our organization can access it. But that's not enough. We want to make sure that these people are authorized within the organization to access that data, i.e. authentication and authorization. We want to authenticate who's accessing our data, reading and writing it, and we want to make sure that they are authorized to do so. Essentially, one of the most painful parts when it comes to securing malware is that we can do our best business effort to protect our data estate, but we'll always have a blind spot. Essentially, it could be from somebody from a certain team that used the password from the personal email and their corporate email, and then we find ourselves breached. Or somebody was negligent with a USB drive or opened a suspicious link in an email. Essentially, no matter what we do, we might get breached. If we are breached, how do we detect and how do we respond to that attack? That's another thing we need to consider, that once we have been breached and we have found that we've been breached, are we protected? Can we protect our data and save it from the bad actors? And last but not least, we said that we get a whole array of tools to protect ourselves. How do we make sure that these tools work harmoniously together, that they combined to provide a holistic defense for our data? And with that, I am going to stop for a poll and see what is your concern when it comes to securing our data, your data. You should see the poll now, and we'll be waiting for the results as they come in. Okay, Leah, do we have the results? Right, thank you very much. So I see that we've got quite an even split. So some people are concerned about backup complexity, which makes a lot of sense. High storage costs, that could also be a concern, that we want to balance our budget and our protection efforts. Recovery time, yeah, sometimes we have very aggressive RTOs or RPOs that we need to meet. And last but not least, compliance requirements. That's also, we've talked about the different compliance regulations, either by governments or organizations, etc. These, we have seen them in the last, I would say, decade, and they're not going anywhere. And with that, to understand how FSX, what is Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP? What part exactly does it take in the Amazon, in the AWS ecosystem? And what's exactly under the bonnet? Sebastian, if you could please walk us through.
Yeah, absolutely. And Danny, I think no truer words were ever spoken. Regulations are not going anywhere. We're going to get more and more and more regulations. So if we look at the entire portfolio of services that Amazon or AWS offers, at the very top you'll have the different categories of services from compute, networking, database, storage, and so on and so forth. And under each one of those categories of services, there's a number of service. For example, in EC2 instances, we've got hundreds of different EC2 instances. Some that are memory optimized, network optimized, GPU outfitted, designed for HPC workloads, and so on and so forth. And that's the case for every single one of the service categories that we have there. But today, what we'll focus on is storage specifically. And within the storage realm, we offer three types of protocol access to storage. If you know storage, you're familiar with block storage, object storage, and file storage. In the case of block storage, predominantly and historically, this has been the realm of EBS. Amazon EBS is the type of volumes that you provision when you create an EC2 instance. It's your boot volume. If you need, more capacity or you want to add more EBS volume, you attach them to your EC2 instances. Then we've got S3. S3 is the very first service that AWS made available for customers to consume. It's object storage. You interact with S3 through HTTP request, HTTPS request. You read and write to an S3 bucket, a namespace that is regional, that runs over every single region that AWS offers. And now, if we look at the file side of the equation, there's really one family of services, which is FSX and Amazon EFS. We'll focus today on the FSX side and more specifically on FSX for NetApp ONTAP. We've introduced FSX, I want to say about 7 years ago, with initially the launch of FSX for Windows. The intention behind that family of service is pretty simple. It's to take existing storage offerings that customers run on premises, that are familiar with it, that they've built workflows around, and make those storage offerings available within AWS. In the case of FSX for NetApp ONTAP, we've actually taken on the ONTAP storage operating system, and we've created it we've offered it in a fully managed service that customers can go into the AWS console. It's a first-party service offered by Amazon, supported by Amazon. You call your TAM, or you place a support ticket with AWS and not with NetApp. And we provide you with a functioning version of ONTAP within a region in AWS. Now, the great thing about how we provide this as a managed service is that we ensure that the hardware behind this is sized appropriately and provides you with the right performance that you're expecting. We provide you, as with many other services, elasticity around your deployment, so you can grow and shrink the throughput that is configured for your file system. But let's focus now. Let's start with accessibility. I mentioned that block storage is predominantly EBS. Well, one thing that changed 3 years ago when we launched FSX for NetApp ONTAP is that we now have a second offering for block storage within AWS, and that is through the use of iSCSI inside in FSX for NetApp ONTAP. So if you have an FSX file system and you have a workload that requires block storage and you want to leverage all of the feature richness of FSX, you can do so by creating a LUN within a volume, presenting that through iSCSI to your EC2 instance and using this as a block storage, very much in the same way that you would use EBS, but with the feature richness that FSX actually offers. Now, moving on to the more common workloads that we have are really around NFS and SMB. So we offer both protocol from NFS v3 all the way to 4.2 and SMB, all the versions of SMB that ONTAP supports. But also the interesting part and the very unique part is that we offer multi-protocol through ONTAP as well. So you can have a namespace that's accessed at the same time, the same files, by both a Windows client as well as a Unix client through SMB and NFS respectively between those two clients. And that gives customers options for those workloads that may have been built over time and that some components of the workflow runs on Windows and some other components of the workflow runs on Linux hosts. And the last thing I'll say about accessibility is that we also have a built-in S3 connector that can make the namespace, the volumes that are running within ONTAP available through the S3 protocol. Now let's move on to resilience and protection. The number one thing about resilience is that ONTAP offers high availability, regardless of the deployment type that you choose when you deploy FSX for NetApp ONTAP, you will be provided with a highly available deployment. Highly available in the single availability zone deployment means that we've got two different file servers running that are in sync between one another on the data that they host, and that if there's ever a hardware failure on the back end in our data center, the service keeps running. So if you lose the host that's running your instance of FSX for NetApp ONTAP, it will fail over to the second host that is paired with the first host. That's in single availability zone deployment. You also have multi-availability zone deployment. So if you're looking for something that will provide availability at the region level, so if you're looking for the equivalent of, say, if you're running on-premise a metro cluster, then you can deploy, again, two different instances of ONTAP that will be synchronously replicated between one another, but that are actually running in two different availability zones. So in this case, if you were to have an impact on an entire availability zone, if there's a tornado that goes through an area and takes out all of the data centers that are associated with a single availability zone, then the failover will happen, and it's going to be transparent to the client. You might experience a little bit of a pause in your IOs for a few seconds, and then your service will resume in the second availability zone. So very, very high level of availability. We also have snapshots. I noticed earlier there in the poll, a lot of you actually mentioned that one of the challenges is not necessarily to back up the data, but to restore it in a timely manner. This is what snapshots do in ONTAP. If you've not worked with ONTAP before, this is a massive differentiator from any other storage offering, is that our snapshots are literally can be taken in less than 1 second. You initiate a snapshot, your snapshot is there. There's no data movement associated with the snapshot. It just takes the blocks, makes them immutable, and any further change is written somewhere else. That also means that restorability is also near instantaneous. You can restore a snapshot that you've taken, whether it's a 1 GB volume, a 100 GB volume, a 10 TB volume. You can restore that in a matter of seconds and make that your primary, your active data set again. From a disaster recovery, FSX for NetApp ONTAP offers cross-region replication built into the storage operating system. So if you're building an application, that application needs to have the level of availability, East Coast, West Coast kind of replication, so that you can fail over and provide your business an RPO and an RTO in minutes. This is the feature that you want to be able to leverage, is SnapMirror in that disaster recovery. We've talked a little bit about backups. I'm not going to spend more time on this. Let's move on to the data security aspect of things. Number one, we offer storage virtual machines. What storage virtual machines is you have FSX as your container, and then within that container, you provision an amount of throughput, you provision an amount of storage that's available for all of the clients that are going to connect to your file system. But within that container, you can create subcontainers, logical subcontainers. Each one of those containers can be configured independently. They can authenticate to a different Active Directory, LDAP server if you want. They provide you with different security contexts, different namespace. That allows you to better leverage the resources that you provision with your new file system. So if you provision 4 gigabytes per second of throughput, and then you've got clients that are accessing it, you've got peaks at 4 gigabytes, but most of the time you're really only averaging like a few hundred megabytes. Well, you can add more workloads and feel safe about the security of those workloads because of the multi-tenancy that's provided to you through SVM. We also have immutable storage, and that is super cool because if you have been working with NetApp for a while, you're familiar with SnapLock. SnapLock was introduced here in AWS and FSX for NetApp ONTAP earlier this year, but one thing that we've also done is we've made that free of charge. There's no extra charge, there's no licensing cost to running SnapLock within AWS. So if you have workloads that leverage immutability, where you have compliance requirements that you need to make, and you need to ensure that the data cannot be deleted by the administrator, the data needs to be kept for a certain amount of years or month, you can configure immutable storage or SnapLock to create that retention for you and be confident that you can meet your requirements. And then malware protection is what we're going to be diving a little bit more deeper with ARP later in this session. But between ARP and antivirus scanning, ONTAP offers you the ability to really protect your data and to make sure that you're as well protected as possible and that you can identify threats before they become problematic in your environment. On the price performance side, one thing that I've mentioned is the elasticity of the service. So you can, if you want, increase or reduce the throughput that's provisioned for your FSX file system, which is awesome. Similarly with the IOPS, that means that if you have a workload that's running on a very long interval, something that runs, say, once a month, and that workload requires a lot of performance, well, you can provision that performance specifically for when that workload runs and then release that performance, only pay for the performance that you've provisioned in the environment. On the back end, we'll do all of the work to increase that performance for you, make that throughput available, those IOPS available for the period of time that you need it. Lastly, data mobility. One of the things that I haven't mentioned yet is based on those snapshots, we can create clones similar to those snapshots. Those clones are thin in nature. They don't use any space until data starts getting modified in those clones. And they're also created near instantaneously. A few seconds and you've got a clone of a volume. Again, that volume may be 1 gigabyte in size, maybe 100 gigabyte, maybe 10 terabytes in size. Still, you'll be able to create that clone in a matter of seconds. It's very useful for customers that are doing dev test QA environments that need to test on production data. You just take that production data, create a clone, do your test, tear that production data, and not have to worry about it. And then remote writable data cache, that's Flex Cache, that's available within FSX for NetApp ONTAP. So if you have a distributed work environment where you've got people that are working with the same data, say in Shanghai and San Francisco and again in London, those people can access the data at a local speed. They can read and write as if the data was local to their site through those caches, and yet keep a consistent data set at the origin through FlexCache. And lastly, data migration. If you have been using SnapMirror, if you have ONTAP on-premise, that ability to just replicate your data between on-premise and in AWS is the same as if you're migrating between two different systems or if you are creating a replication relationship specifically for disaster recovery. Back to you, Danny.
Right, thank you very much. So now that Sebastian has so eloquently told us what exactly Amazon FSx for ONTAP, what is it, what's under there, where does it reside. Let's see how can it help us when it comes to the challenges of protecting our storage layer that we've discussed earlier. So first of all, when it comes to data integrity, we talked a little bit about snapshots, those lightweight point-in-time read-only backups that can be used both locally and remotely, and we're going to talk about it later. When it comes to access control, how we can, with a strict granular data segregation, we can basically segregate the data according to our tenants, making sure that only that everybody is accessing their own data and do not, under any circumstances, can access their neighbor's data or their next of team data, wherever in whatever logic that we want to set it up. We're going to talk about autonomous ransomware protection, how we can detect and how we can respond to attacks, how we can essentially learn our storage usage patterns and to detect any anomalies as they occur within our data estate, and what automated actions we're going to take in order to recover from an attack should one happen. And we're going to talk about how we're going to integrate with the different protection tools that we might have, whether they're the ones, the first-party tools supplied by AWS to protect our estate, or if we were going to use third-party tools, how can Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP can work with those. And without further ado, let's dive into data integrity. So you can't really talk about an ONTAP system without talking about NetApp snapshots. As we've said, they're read-only point-in-time image of the data that we have. So in ONTAP, we've got our logical storage unit called a volume. The data there is divided to 4 kilobyte blocks of data. And when we're creating a snapshot, it only uses pointers to the volume's data, and therefore they're immediate and they don't take up space. As long as the volume does not change, data is not deleted or other data is added, then the snapshots do not take up space. Once we are starting to change the data, then the snapshot only takes the delta between the original volume and the original snapshot, so they're very light. And therefore, they're very instantaneous. Another thing about them, they're read-only by definition, meaning that if there's a ransomware rampaging through our file system, they cannot augment the snapshot itself because it is read-only, even for administrators, and therefore cannot be encrypted by ransomware. We talked about backup. It could be used for local backups. It can be used for remote backups with AWS backup, where you could, when you're taking snapshots and putting them somewhere else outside your file system to make sure that you're protected, even if the file system itself crashes. And they're not whole without storage mutability. So the NetApp customers in the audience might know it as SnapLock. Essentially, we can prevent the modification or even the deletion of data. The volumes that we've discussed earlier can be set up for write once, read many. Basically, we write to the volume, and then once we have written the data, we can't augment it. It is read only. It cannot be modified or deleted. So it's a very strong feature. We can think about so many highly regulated bodies like financial institutions or perhaps the healthcare system that are mandated to keep data for long periods of time. The data cannot be manipulated or changed once created. And that feature is a very, very powerful tool. It could be on the volume level, it can be on the file level, meaning that the file can be written once and then locked. And of course, the volume snapshots themselves can be locked, meaning that even if our system has been compromised and all our data has been encrypted, so we said that snapshots can't be encrypted, but what if the bad actors have managed to get their dirty hands on administrative credentials? Then they might delete our snapshots. Well, with immutable snapshots, that is impossible. Snapshots can also be immutable for a certain period of time. And as I've said, it is a very, very powerful tool. And to quote Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, With great power comes great responsibility. So I'm sure the NetApp people in the audience are grinning to themselves, remembering stories about people who had some issues with SnapLock, tragic or funny. I'll leave it to you. But we all heard stories about people using immutable storage and were able to find out that they can't delete data that they needed to be deleted. So it's very powerful, and we all need to be responsible. And what is it used for? So it is used for complying with the regulations. And as we've said, these are not going anywhere. Protecting against ransomware attacks. And I regret to say that these, unfortunately, are not going anywhere soon. And preventing accidental or rogue deletion. We talked about bad actors, but we all make mistakes. We can all, I can definitely talk on my own behalf. I've made many, many mistakes in the past, and having a mechanism that would stop deletion is something very, very powerful, especially if you are mandated by regulation to keep that. You want to be on the safe side and make sure that you are protected both legally and technologically. And let's talk about access control. So we talked about bad actors, we talked about accidents, and the first thing to prevent an accident is to make sure that only the professionals who are supposed to access a certain data set can access it. How do we do that? So Sebastian mentioned the tenant isolation abilities of FSX for ONTAP, essentially having strict data segregation within the same file system. So first of all, we have the volumes themselves, the basic logical storage unit. These can be, the access to them can be restricted by IP password. You can allow certain IPs, restrict certain IPs according to your organization's logic. And if you need something a bit stronger than that, you can use storage virtual machine, meaning you can have a virtual machine within your file system where you can append different Active Directories, different IP sets, completely different policies. And with that, you can have one file system running on, let's say, for example, you're hosting multiple SaaS environments for organizations that require you to have a single tenant for their SaaS environments. If you work in the financial sector, it is a very common ask. With FSX for ONTAP, with the storage virtual machines, essentially, you can have many single tenant environments on one multi-tenant file system and comply with regulations because you're using a different IP scope, you're using a different domain, and essentially you're having different storage virtual machines. So that's something that could be very useful when it comes to complying on the one hand, and on the other hand, being efficient with the way you use your resources. And with that, so we've talked about the some of the defense mechanism, but as we said, we can't be too sure. We also need to prepare to an event where our data has been breached and something wrong has happened, and we notice that something wrong has happened. How do we respond? How do we make sure that we are protected, and how do we recover? Sebastian?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. So when it comes to autonomous ransomware protection, or ARP, there's a couple of things that are important. Well, we provide some tools for you to use within FSX for NetApp ONTAP. What attackers will typically do is they will look at trying to get access to your data. And there's a couple of different ways that attackers can get access to your data. One is through trying to attack the storage itself, but we've covered like the layers of security that are available to you. And as you can imagine, once you put security group, network access control list, you put your file system in a private subnet, it becomes very hard to attack the storage itself. So typically what we see bad actors do is they will try to leverage your application, either your applications or your end users through phishing. But when they do through applications, one of the things that they'll do is they'll try to hack into your applications to get access to that data. And this is where ARP actually comes into play. The ARP, or Autonomous Ransomware Protection feature in FSx for NetApp ONTAP allows you to turn the ARP feature on, look at how your application traditionally behaves. So it will analyze the IO patterns of your applications, understand what is normal behavior for your application. And then if something happens to your environment, if something changes in how that data gets accessed, meaning if an attacker got access to your application and all of a sudden they're doing something different, maybe they start encrypting data, or they start reading data that they shouldn't be reading, that the application doesn't usually read, or it's the pattern, how fast they're reading data compared to usual, then all of a sudden the ARP will trigger. So the first step into turning on ARP is to create that learning so that the ARP system will learn the natural behavior of the application. And then once that application is understood by ARP, once there's a model that's built on how the application uses the data, it'll realize things like, okay, well, during the day I'm doing online transaction protocol or online transaction processing, and then I'm going to get very random IO all over the place. But at night, it's normal that I have a backup that's running, and then I'm going to seek through and I'm going to see all of the data being read and being moved over somewhere else. And then if it sees a pattern that's different from this, what ARP will do is we'll take a snapshot of that volume to say, oh, something's happening. I've detected an anomalous behavior, and it's going to move that snapshot over to immutable storage to make sure that we are protecting the data that we want to keep safe from attackers. So it automatically does this for you as soon as you turn on the ARP feature. Again, the first thing that needs to be done is to enable ARP for learning during a certain period of time, typically like 30 days, so that it learns the behavior throughout the life cycle of the application, during that it learns all of the patterns that the application will do over a full cycle of the application running. Maybe you've got a monthly job or a weekly job that you want to make sure that is taking into consideration. And then it'll start, once we enable it, for protection of the environment, it'll automatically take those snapshots and make your data immutable so that if there is a problem, you can always revert back to the last version. And a snapshot is great because it provides you protection. An immutable snapshot means that there is no way that that snapshot can be deleted, not by an administrator, not by the application itself, not by an end user. So that gives you that extra layer of protection on your data to make sure that there's nothing that can happen to your data. So the
Okay.
last,
There you go,
oh,
Sebastian.
go ahead,
Sorry.
Danny.
Go ahead. I'll
So
give
the
you.
last thing we'll talk about before Danny jumps into a demo is the integration of the security throughout the entire stack in AWS. So what do we offer in terms of tools for you to protect your environment? So if we look at this, the very first layer of security that we offer is your VPC. So VPC is your virtual private cloud. It's your own little IP address space within the AWS data center that is completely isolated from every other tenant that's on there. Then we offer you security groups. Security groups are, think of them as a firewall rule that you apply across a number of different network interfaces. Those network interfaces can be attached, in our case, either to the EC2 instances that are accessing the file system, or we also define and apply those same network access, not a networking, sorry, the security groups to the interfaces that are provisioned with the FSxN file system. So that provides you with that level of protection, that control which IP can access which resource within your network. From there, we also offer IAM. IAM is a control that supersedes everything and that defines which resource has access to what other resource. So unless you have a policy within IAM that's defined that says, yes, that EC2 instance, or yes, that user or that role has access to the FSXN file system, those permissions will not be put in place for users or different roles to access the volume or the file system that you've created. So there, it creates like that logical isolation between the component, and we need to decide and enable the communication between, enable the access to each one of those resources. Next up, we've got directory services. So once you've got that FSXN file system, you can attach that to a directory service such as Active Directory, for example, and you can control which users within the file system, within the volume that you've provisioned, which user can access what file. And this is really a fine-grained control over user and data to make sure that the right user has access to the right data through groups and user ownership. Next up, we've got KMS. KMS is our key management system. Anytime you create an FSXN volume or file system, that file system is automatically encrypted. We provide AWS managed keys for this. Customers can use their own keys, and we provide the KMS service to generate and manage those keys for you within the AWS environment. So we've built layers of security around your environment to give you as much control as possible in any possible situation to make that data available and make that data safe and only accessible by the users that should have access, and the other components within your AWS infrastructure that should have access to those resources.
Okay, Sebastian, I think I'll take malware protection and the demo if it's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Great. So we talked about some of the we talked about ARP and how it helps us with malware protection. Let's talk a little bit about other cyber threat detection and remediation that come with FSX and how some of them work with other tools. So first up, we've got F-policy. F-policy would first of all block any attempts to encrypt or add suffixes that are suspicious, such as LOL, LCKD, etc. That could imply a ransomware attack. They would also work with third-party softwares should you use them, and will report back and see whether to allow or deny the process. And when it comes to antivirus, also we're working with antiviruses when there is a creation of files from our applications. Antivirus would work with vScan to make sure that the access itself is the new files will be scanned and communicated whether that new creation of the file should be allowed, should it be denied. Essentially, working harmoniously with third-party tools, with whatever things you need to you're bringing from your organizations that you need to do to secure your applications. And with that, I think it is high time for a demo. So I'll quickly jump to my demo environment. If you'd be so kind as to give me a minute. Okay, and now we've got the demo up and running. And the first thing we are going to do, please jump back. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to a NetApp console called Workload Factory. Now, the thing is, don't be allowed workload. Everything I do here in Workload Factory, you can do with ONTAP CLI commands on your FSX for ONTAP. It is not required, but it is a very lovely tool. It comes with DCO calculators. It comes with automation and friendly wizards for different operations around FSX for NetApp ONTAP, whether you want to use it for databases, whether you want to use it for any general storage use cases. Essentially gives you a whole console enveloping FSX for ONTAP where you can get it right the first time. And the best thing, it's free, but for this demo, I'm only using it for simplicity's sake. Everything I do in the demo you can do by yourself with the ONTAP CLI. So I just wanted to make that clear. So the first thing we'll do, I'll go to my storage, and then I'll go to my discovered FSX for ONTAP file systems, and I'll choose one of them. Click Manage, and go to Autonomous Ransomware Protection. And here what I'm going to do is, before I allow it, I'm going to, first of all, I need to enable it and tick the box. Before I click Apply, just want to talk about it. So for the demo's sake, we're going to speed this part. But essentially, once you enable ransomware protection, autonomous ransomware protection, it will get into learning mode. It will take up to 30 days to learn the different storage patterns and understand what is normal behavior on your file system. And once it is after the learning period, it is going to it will scan your system, and once, should there be any threats, should there be any ransomware attempts, it will take immutable snapshots to protect our data on the volume and make sure that those snapshots are not deleted. Hence, it is written what are the policies for how long the snapshots are going to be protected, which is important. And we understand, we click that we understand that those snapshots cannot be deleted for the predefined period. Let's click Apply. And now we can go to our Windows machine. In our Windows machine, I have a CIFS share from my FSX for ONTAP file system. I've put some random files on it, PDFs, docs, etc. Whatever you expect to find on a shared folder in an organization. But unfortunately, somebody was not very careful in my organizations, and alas, we have a ransomware attack, and something is encrypting our files, our PDFs and our docs. Whatever shall we do? Well, fortunately, a minute ago, or 30 days ago, for the example's sake, we've activated ARP, but we see that all the files are locked, LCKD. We see what the ransomware attack has done to our estate. Now, a quick explanation. What I did here is I opened my terminal. I SSH'd to my FSX for ONTAP system. You can find the right IP in your AWS console. And essentially what I was doing, I was looking for snapshots that were created by ARP and are immutable. And now let's say that not only did the bad actor encrypt my files, but the bad actor also got hold of my my administrative credentials, and now is trying. I'm using a CLI command to delete the snapshot, and let's see what error message I get. I'm trying to delete the snapshot. I'll click yes. How evil of me. And I am getting an error. The error said that it failed to delete the snapshot because it is protected by, locked by SnapLock. That means essentially that this is an immutable snapshot and cannot be deleted even when I use the administrator account. Now, if I piqued your interest and you want to create a file system, an FSX for ONTAP file system in your sandbox and try ARP for yourself, here's a warning. Don't ask me how I found out, but if you have immutable snapshots on your FSX for ONTAP file system, you can't delete it from the AWS console. So as I've said, make sure to put a very short period of on the immutability of the snapshot should you want to try it at home. But other than that, I strongly encourage you to try it yourself and see what happens. And now let's go back with that little warning. Let's go back to our folder, and we already have the snapshots available, the snapshot data available, and we can restore the files that have been encrypted and we require for our daily business operation. So we will restore the files. Let's take some documents and some PDFs and restore them. These files can harm your computer. I think that's a little bit too late for that. And now we can put them back in their appropriate place and delete the old files, the locked files, the encrypted files. And now we have restored the files. And we can remove the locked files. And now our company, our CFO, and our Bitcoin wallet will all be very grateful for us. And we have demonstrated how we can protect ourselves from a ransomware attack. And with that, I think we can go back to the presentation. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we've talked. You should be seeing my screen now.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. And I think it's time for a summary. So essentially, we've talked about the 7 layers of security, about how it is common, how we protect our data wherever it goes, from the endpoint, from the perimeter, all the way to where the data itself resides, where our storage layer, essentially, what protects our storage layer is our last line of defense. We learned about the storage mechanisms that come with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. How do they fit in with third-party tools that you bring from home, and how do they come with the vast array of protection tools that AWS offers us, and how do we use it smartly? And last but not least, we saw a demo of the autonomous ransomware protection and how it creates an immutable snapshot that cannot be deleted even with administrative privileges. And now to finish us off, Liat will send the very last poll for this webinar. Liat? And Liat, do we have the results? Let's see. Oh, yes, we do. Thank you very much. As expected, one of the features that was found most valuable is one of my favorite features too, which is snapshots and clone, or in our case, immutable snapshots. At least my favorite as well. So I'm glad you liked it as well. Many great protection features that come with FSx for ONTAP. And with that, we will continue. If you want to, first of all, if you're interested in what exactly how we built this presentation, what were the sources that are listed here, you will get a recording and a copy of this deck. I did present Workload Factory. If you want to check it out, you can check out the QR code. You don't have to put, at least at first, you don't have to put your credentials or anything. You can just take a look around without using credentials. You can at least use the TCO calculators to even see if FSx for ONTAP makes sense for your particular business use case. And with that, I think we did answer some questions during the presentation, but let's see if we have any unanswered questions.
The one question we have from Chonyu Chan is snap lock configuration is done at volume creation. Is there a way to modify the volume after its creation to enable snap lock? I want to, I'm not 100% certain. I do believe that if you do a volume snap lock modify, you can actually modify a volume to enable snap lock, right? Do you know, Danny?
Yes, I believe you do. I think when I was working on the demo, I was able to modify existing volumes. Once again, to be on the safe side, I would try it yourself. Also, you can consult, I guess, with the. I know that the people in Amazon support really do know their stuff also about ONTAP. So I would always bet on asking somebody with with current relevant experience. But it worked for me at the demo.
And
Um, and
I will come back to what you said, Danny, earlier. Make sure you do not set a very long retention period.
yeah, very,
Otherwise,
very,
you're stuck with that volume and with that configuration.
Yeah, I heard lots of horror stories from our professional service people on on-premise ONTAP, on other ONTAP system, and also I'm sure on FSX there are already ARP is relatively new, but I'm sure there are already horror stories being created as we speak. So please, I urge you, you get great power. Please be responsible. And on that note, I'd like to first of all thank Sebastian for co-hosting with me and sharing his insight with us. Thank you very much, Sebastian. I want to thank Liat for sending the polls and helping us make sure that this podcast is with very minimal hiccups. So thank you very much, Liat, for keeping us honest. And last but not least, I'd like to thank you, the listeners, the audience. First of all, thank you for answering the polls. It helped us making sure that we give you the best content that we can. Thank you for sending questions that made this an interactive session and sort of interacting with us and making it more engaging. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all in future webinars. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day.